Welcome to Navigating a Broken Vessel. I'm Dave Harris. I want to welcome you to another episode. And today we're going to be talking specifically about grief. We're going to talk about things that can cause grief, of course, and we can talk about things of how we might be able to navigate some experiences that might happen that might maybe even rock our testimony a little bit. Maybe we get into some things that might be a struggle for a lot of people. And so do listen, do talk. And I do want to remind everyone, we're not professionals here. I'm just talking from my own experience. I'm going to welcome a guest in just a second. She's just talking from her own experience. Definitely seek out professional advice as desired in terms of therapy and psychiatry, things like that. Okay. Now, with that in mind, I do want to talk about Kim Delis. Kim, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Going to give you a little bit of background, everybody. Kim actually is my wife, Shelly's cousin, and you're the oldest cousin. Is that right?
I'm the oldest of all the cousins on that side.
So yes. You have
no pressure.
Yeah, that's right. You have the most wisdom. Right?
Apparently.
Yeah. I've always known that about you because I've known you for, it's probably been 27 years, somewhere in that area.
We both just hit 25 years. My husband, and then you and Shelly, 25 years of marriage. So at least 25 plus a couple of years. Yeah.
That's right. And it's always fun. I always enjoy coming to your house. You all are just wonderful people. That's all there's to it.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. So what the reason you're on, and one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you, and you said you're a longtime listener, you talk about all the episodes, and I really appreciate that very much. But I wanted to ask you, I want to take you back. You know what? Before we take you back, give me a little bit of background, if you don't mind. Tell me, where you fit with your family, your siblings, and things like that.
Yeah. So not only am I the oldest of all the cousins, I'm the oldest child in my family, oldest of 6. And I'm the first grandchild on both sides. So kind of put in this role of being the responsible one, always do the right thing, say the right thing. And I'm blessed with 5 younger siblings. So next is my brother. And then I have a sister, brother Bryson, a brother Tyler, and then Trevor. After my mom had sold the crib, Trevor comes along. So 15 years between myself and Trevor.
Gotcha. So that's one of those, we're happy to have another baby.
So happy to have another baby. Couldn't imagine life without him.
Yeah. And Trevor, and all your siblings are fantastic people. I've loved my interactions with each one of them. I think they're great people. Your family, always, your mom and dad, wonderful people. And we'll talk about how I've only been able to know them just a few years because they have passed away. And we'll talk about that. But wonderful people in the few years that I got to know them. Tell me about growing up in your family. Talk about your parents and kind of what it was like to grow up with them as your parents.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear people talk about them, just to know that they're remembered, just even your 2 years. It's Memorial Weekend. We were just at the cemetery to bring our flowers, and their graves were just covered in flowers from other people. So it's just nice to know that they're not forgotten and that they made an impact in their time here. They were wonderful parents. My mom wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what she wanted to do, and she excelled in every way. We had homemade bread every week, help with homework. We were driven to every activity. We had piano lessons, everything we needed growing up. My dad worked hard for us. He would walk to work sometimes and pack a lunch. I remember his lunchbox, and he would walk to work. He had to walk past a scary dog, and we just had one car, so that's what he needed to do to provide for his family. And they made sure we enjoyed the outdoors. We did fun things together as a family. Just looking back, I'm actually scanning in some old photos right now to share with everybody, and it's just been wonderful to remember how good I had it.
Yeah. One of the things that Shelly, my wife, has talked about is how when I think the story is that when you were helping to clean out their house, when this event took place, which we're about to talk about, that there was someone found, I'm not sure who it was, but basically a suitcase filled with hotel soaps. Is that true?
Well, yeah. I mean, pioneer mentality, right? You don't spend more than you earn, and you save. And we were prepared for any kind of emergency, right? If there was a shortage, we would have the soap. So we'd have the toilet paper.
And I think that's wonderful. And a lot of times, I stay in hotels. I'm like, okay, you use the soap for a day, and then it's whatever's left over, it's gone. Yes. Why not take it home and put it in a suitcase, and then you have a bunch of soap? But that to me is kind of how, at least in my limited experience and stories that I've heard about your mother and your father as well, just being prepared, wanting to do what's best, wanting to raise a great family and so forth.
It's so true.
Awesome. So let's go back to, what is it, 2002?
2002.
So 2002, tell me about what was going on with your family. Maybe you got Bryson, you got Tyler, you got Trevor, who's your baby brother, who's probably quite young still. Talk to me about what was going on in your family dynamic at that time.
Sure. So the 3 older siblings, we were all married and had moved away from home. And then the 4th sibling was just home from his mission. He'd served in Oakland, California.
And that's Bryson.
That's Bryson.
Okay.
So Bryson was home maybe 6 months. And then Tyler had received his mission call. He was going to fly directly from Salt Lake to the Sao Paulo MTC in Brazil and then serve in the Rio mission. So he was the first of my siblings to go foreign. We were so nervous and excited all at the same time. And then my younger brother, Trevor, is 14. And so 8th grade, probably one of the hardest times in anybody's life is 8th grade, looking back on my own. So that's where we were at.
Absolutely. And we talk about, former episodes or whatever. I've talked about my middle school years, and it's a terrible time for me. That's right. And so this is, what is it, February? Does that sound right?
So it was December.
December.
It was a week before Christmas. So the day is December 16th, 2002. We're coming up on the 24th anniversary when pretty much everything changed.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, so walk through kind of from your perspective and what you know, talk about what happened.
So back up to the day before, December 15th, it was a Sunday, making the 16th a Monday, and it was Tyler's mission farewell. And it was, when you're at a farewell, you're just saying goodbye. So in a way, I didn't know it yet, but I was saying goodbye to Tyler and to my parents because we were driving back. We were living in the Salt Lake Valley and they were living in Roosevelt, Utah. So they were coming to my house that night to stay the night so that he could catch his flight the following morning to Brazil.
And when you say they, who was in the car?
So it was my mom and dad, and then Tyler, the missionary, and then my brother Bryson, since he didn't have anything going on, he also came. Trevor, it was a school day, and so he had a lot of tests, getting into the semester for Christmas. So he stayed behind with a neighbor so he could take all of his tests the next day.
So I want to kind of sum it up so I make sure I understand. So you've got the 3 older siblings, yourself, and then your next younger brother and sister.
Yep.
Everyone had been at the farewell, a luncheon and other things that takes place. And then you all 3, you had already gone home the day before. And your home is closer to the MTC or to the airport, I should say, than Roosevelt. And so they needed to drive to drop Tyler off at the airport. Okay. And so this is now, is it the morning? Is it the evening?
So interesting thing, maybe a lot of people don't know, is the mission department had called and changed his flight at the very last minute to make it an early morning flight. So that's what changed their plans to come stay the night at my house. They weren't even going to stay the night. They were just going to come out that morning because it was an afternoon flight. They get the last minute word, okay, it's a morning flight. Well, we're going to quickly come stay at Kim's. So their thinking was even so that we don't have to get up early and drive in that snowstorm because the snowstorm was coming.
So the weather was bad. They knew the weather was bad. And it was kind of, we got to do it, right? There's an airplane taking off and we got to make sure Tyler's on it. And so this is the night before then, and it's snowing, and the road, we'll talk about the road and other things.
So it was snowing. I was a new mom. I had my first child, Will. He was 9 months old. So this was my first Christmas as a mom. And so you can imagine we had our tree set up. We had driven around that day looking at Christmas lights with Will. And then my husband and I were sitting down. We just had the lights of the tree on, no other lights. And we were just sitting on the floor playing backgammon, waiting for them to arrive. And then they didn't arrive. And time kept going on. And this was 2002. So we had our cell phones were more for emergencies back then. And we got on the internet and we saw that there was a pinpoint dot that there had been an accident over the Strawberry Valley. This was right next to Strawberry Reservoir, Highway 40, sometimes a deadly road. And my thought was, okay, they are stuck in the traffic because of this accident and they don't have cell service. And that's why they're not calling. Because otherwise they would call, they were prepared. Why they're coming the night before, always prepared with the soaps, they would have called and said something, but they can't get service. So we just waited and waited. And yeah.
And I think a lot of people, it's weird as humans, I think a lot of us all of a sudden go to the worst. We're like, oh, there's been a wreck. it must be them. Was there any of that going on in your mind or was it literally kind of like, okay, yep, all is well, because, and tell me if you were thinking all was well, why were you thinking that way?
That's such a great question, because at that time I did not go to the worst. I think now I do. Because of that, when I get a phone call from one of my kids that's unexpected, I go to the worst. I get a phone call from a relative I haven't talked to in a long time, I go to the worst. So I do that now. I think because of this, it's changed me a little bit. And sometimes I do get bad news, but I know that I can handle it because I've handled it before.
And with that in mind, so talk about then, what took place after this.
Yeah, so the 10 o'clock news comes on TV. I'm not watching it because we're still kind of watching and waiting out the window. We had the blinds up, and I get a call from my sister. One of her friends had seen the 10 o'clock news, and it was very general. It just said a family of 4 killed in a car accident by Strawberry Reservoir. And she knew they were coming to my house, and so she called me and said, "Are mom and dad there yet?" And so she said, "Somebody just saw it on the news." So I'm talking to her with the phone in one hand. I've got the remote in the other hand, and I'm trying to get the news up so I can see what she's seeing. And at that point, I was kind of thinking the worst. It just kind of confirmed for me. And as I'm holding these 2 props, I look out my window and I see 2 highway patrol cars pass my house. And it's a dead-end street, but they kept going. And I just knew they were there for me. So I ran outside in my driveway. It's 10 o'clock at night on a winter night. And I must have been screaming. And I'm screaming to them, "Just here, it's here, come here. Just tell me what I need to know." And so they did. They came inside and said, "Let's sit down." I had just taken a picture of Will in a little Christmas jammies. He had a little elf hat on, and it was on the mantle by the stockings. And I just remember looking at that, and in that moment thinking, he's never going to know them. He will never know them. And it's my job to tell their story so that my kids will know them.
Yeah. And that's, I think a person would always ask, what were the thoughts that went through your mind? I suspect probably there were thousands of thoughts going through your mind, and among them being, hey, no more grandparents. I'd leave my children. Don't. And obviously Will is the first of a few, right? There are others who came along who never at all. I mean, Will met them, probably, most likely doesn't remember them, but
9 months old now.
But he at least had an interaction. Maybe you have a photo.
Pictures, we do.
Yeah. Here they are holding Will and so forth. And the others, that's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Tell me then, amongst those thoughts, those hundreds of thoughts or whatever, tell me, if you don't mind, some of those thoughts that you were having.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm very lucky. I had a very unique experience. And I know I've listened to all your podcasts. You've talked a lot about home teaching, which we now call ministering. And it's so important. So when I was in the driveway screaming, my neighbor across the street at the time was my home teacher, which we now call ministering. So because we had a relationship, because he was a friend, he didn't hesitate to come out of his home in the middle of a storm at 10 o'clock at night and just come into my house because he knew something was bad. And he called and got our bishop over right then and there, the leader of our congregation. And he offered to give me a blessing of comfort. So he laid his hands on my head. And I don't remember anything else about the blessing other than this, that I will not know the answer why in this life, why this happened to me, but I will someday. And that has been such a blessing to know that. It's so easy to ask why. Why did this happen? But not once have I questioned why. And it's because of that experience early on from a home teacher that brought it to me.
And so this was someone that you knew. He had come to your house. He had been there and happened to be outside at 10 o'clock.
Or he heard me. I don't know.
Whatever it was, somehow, and was like, oh, wow, I need to get over to the Delis' house and figure out what's going on. I can only imagine from his perspective too, what can I do, that kind of a thing.
But isn't that wonderful that you can just act without thinking sometimes? That you don't have to wait and wonder if I'm doing the right thing. You just act. And it was the absolute right thing to do. Yeah.
That's so amazing. So all 4 people, your mom, your dad, your 2 brothers, one who had been home 6 months from a mission, one who was just about to fly to the MTC. I can imagine that you were probably, I mean, you say I never question why. I can imagine with you, with your siblings, if it were me, I mean, if it were me, I'd be like, I would be asking why. I mean, and I feel like I feel like I have a strong testimony, right? I feel like the Lord blesses us at the same time, but I can also imagine it's like, hey, you've got two people who are parents, who are great parents, who are making homemade bread every week and have hotel soaps and prepared and great people with the neighborhood and, excellent neighbors serving other people. You have one boy who's come home from a mission. He's been home 6 months. He came home with honors he returned with honor, I should say. Right. I don't want to get that, it's like a graduation thing, but he performed a great mission. And you've got another guy that's going to a foreign mission for the first time in the family. I can imagine that why would be a question that I would come up with. And so talk to me about how was it that you, I mean, I get it, the blessing was there any thought of why that came into your mind?
No, I was really spared from that. I did have trouble grieving. I'm not a very emotional person normally. So to try to feel it and work through it was difficult. And I even went to the library. I'm looking up resources on multiple loss. And at the time, and I don't know if there is now, but there just wasn't anything out there. But one thing I did find is it's okay to grieve unequally. And that kind of changed my grieving, because for my brothers, after we went through their stuff, I found Bryson's missionary journals. And he had written about a dream that he had one night as a missionary. And that next morning, he just wanted to be a missionary forever. He had quoted, "Oh, that I were an angel," scripture in the Book of Mormon, that he just wanted to keep doing what he was doing. So I've hardly been sad for him. And then I was feeling guilty about I should feel sad, but it's just it's what he wanted. And my younger brother of the brothers, Tyler, was a missionary for 6 hours. He died with his name tag on. And I just picture them as mission companions, just doing what they wanted to do forever. So for me, I have a hard time feeling sad about that. And it's okay to not feel guilty about that. And then my dad and mom, different story, of course, but especially my mom. There's just no one like your mom. And for years, I struggled with Mother's Day at church. I could not go for years. We were going to go to Cafe Rio that night for dinner, because he was going to Rio on his mission. It was probably like 9 years before we could bring ourselves to go to Cafe Rio again. Mother's Day, I wanted to run away and leave. I couldn't listen to everybody talking about their moms and how great they were, and mine wasn't here, and watching everybody have something that I didn't have. And then one day in primary, one of the leaders invited a guest panel of moms to come sit behind the chalkboard so they could only see our legs. And they asked silly questions, and the moms answered, and then the kids tried to guess who was their mom. And that was such a changing point for me, because it flipped the script that instead of thinking about what I had lost, I realized I've been blessed with so much. I was a mom at that time. I had 4 kids at that time. It took some time to get to that point, to flip the script, to focus on what I've lost instead of what I have. And that's kind of changed my whole mindset.
So sometimes, and you've probably heard it in past episodes, I've talked about, it feels like we have these crossroads moments in our lives where we experience a trial, and I talk about the 2 roads, about how the one road we can take, we know it's going to be hard. I mean, you could see the road. It's going to be tough. You know that's the hard road to take. Mm-hmm. And then you have the other road that's the easy road. That's the, hey, this is, it's maybe it's got a little motorcycle for you to ride down that road. It's just easy, but the hard road is the one where you gain the most experience, the most learning, the most knowledge, and so forth. But you have to choose which road you're going to take. Do you feel like there was a moment during this time in your life, after having had this experience, do you feel like there was a crossroads moment? And was this what you're just talking about? Was that the crossroads moment? Were there others? I'm assuming it's not a single choice as well.
I can think of 2 others. So one thing that I was blessed with so much right after that has kept me strong in my testimony. So at the funeral, and it had been just a week leading up to that, it was denial. It wasn't real. We were delayed a day getting out to the funeral home because we had family flying in that we had to carpool with. And it just for the first day, I thought, this is not real. They've got the wrong people. I needed to see them. And then we get to the mortuary, and the mortician hands me my mom's wedding ring in a little Ziploc bag. And that's kind of when it was real to me, and that they're not coming back. And with this being so close to Christmas, she had just being prepared again. She had already sent the Christmas presents out. I already had them for her, for my first son, Will. And we didn't end up opening them until about a week after Christmas, because it just ruined Christmas. I mean, there really was no other way around it. And we finally, I think it was January, we're finally opening our presents. And it wasn't how I had imagined it at all, being a first-time mom. And I open a present from her to Will, and it's a little onesie that's got Wilson on it, the Wilson athletic brand. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I bet she did that because Will is my son, Will's son. And I picked up the phone to call her. And that's when I realized I'm never going to be able to call her again in this life. But I know her well enough that, of course, that is why she did that. And I just had the impression there's going to be more and more times in my life when I'm going to want to call her and can't. But I just know her well enough that she will be close to me. I will know those answers. I don't need to doubt at all. The second thing that comes to mind was actually during the funeral, and just a week leading up to this of just chaos and planning the funeral, and just something I'd never thought I would deal with. Learned a lot, but finally setting down at the funeral, I was so elated. I can't even describe the joy I felt. And it stayed with me. We'd had two funerals, one in Roosevelt and the one down here in southern Utah, which is where they're buried. It's home really to all of us. And driving down from funeral number 1 to funeral number 2, we had to cross through Strawberry again, and it was snowing again, and we slid on the road, and it was very scary. But I just had that joy with me. And then one of my siblings needed some windshield wipers. So we stopped at Walmart, and I walked into the Walmart, and it was just like the dreary world was just back. And I've never felt that kind of joy before or since. And all I can think is I've got to feel a little bit of the joy they must have been feeling. So that I live every day so I can feel that again.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I apologize for being a little teary-eyed myself as well, but, and I remember those days, and I barely knew you. I mean, Shelley and I had only been married a couple of years, and we've probably seen each other. I remember there was a family reunion, and I remember your mom singing, and the name of the song was The Grand Reunion. And I remember she was harmonizing with her two sisters, among them my mother-in-law, and so forth. And other than that, I mean, there was very little experience because you all lived about 400 miles away. And it wasn't something we saw you very often. But I remember, just feeling like, because for me, anytime someone has an experience like this, I cannot help but feel that same sort of, I think people call it empathy. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, oh my gosh, I remember Shelley getting a phone call and we found out about it. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, you've got Trevor who's 14 and you've got all the other members. And that's a huge change mm-hmm. for a person's life. And I think it's hard not to feel sad, but at the same time, it's amazing to me to have you talk about feeling elation, right? I mean, describe why you feel like you felt that way.
I think it was a gift. It really was a gift, just a tiny taste so that I could stay on the path so that I can be with them again. I also remember feeling when it happened that cars are driving down my street, nobody knows. My world just completely stopped. I wanted everyone else to stop too, because my world completely stopped. It's not fair that they all get to go about their everyday lives when I'm not going to be able to do that ever again. But I do think it was a gift.
Nice. That's so Trevor.
Yes.
Trevor's 14 years old. How do you navigate that? Because now he's a minor, mm-hmm. right? He not only has lost his parents the same as you, but who does he turn to? How does he continue on? I mean, his life, I'm sure, is completely mm-hmm. more changed than anybody else's in the entire family. Right. And I don't want to speak for Trevor or have you speak for Trevor necessarily, but how do you navigate something like that as well?
This navigating is the perfect word for it, because it was an unknown for all of us. And with him staying at the neighbor's house, it was hard for me to not be with him, to know how he was taking the news. Nobody else lived in Roosevelt. So he just lost the 4 people that he lived with immediately, my parents and then his 2 older brothers. So everything was wiped out for him. We still had our spouses. We had our children. He had nothing. And we presented to him a choice. Okay, you can come live with Kim, who lives in the city. You can move to Arizona, or you can move to Logan. And he said, I picked none of the above. And so to his credit, he's a special person to know his own mind at 14. And it was meant to be, because we would have ripped him out from his friends. And so it was the middle of the school year. The same neighbor that he stayed with that night opened up their home to him and let him live there until at least to finish the school year. So we kept our house up and running, and then he stayed at the neighbors. So we had some adult supervision, but that way he could keep his dog. He could go over to his own house when he just needed a moment. And then he was able to finish the school year with his friends, and people were so kind to him.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, he is.
He really is. Now, in terms, so this is now, we're looking 25 years ago. You've had children, 3 more children since Will. And tell me about how the last 25 years has gone. How have you navigated the changes? Have there been additional experiences that you would mind sharing that are okay in the last 25 years?
Sure. So Halloween is, people decorate their houses for Halloween, and they put graveyards in front of their houses. And my kids would always ask me, why is that scary? Because we've spent a lot of time at cemeteries, visiting their graves and talking about them, and they're very much alive. We talk about them all the time. We share their stories, what they were like. My husband lost his dad when he was 15. My husband, Matt, was at a high school football game, and his dad and mom were there, and his dad ended up having an acute asthma attack and died right there in front of him. So when I met my husband, I was just in awe of him, that how did you get through something like that? And I think people look at me sometimes and think, how did you go through something like that? But we just do. We just navigate what we've been given. And there are people to help us all along the way. My kids have wonderful friends. I think it's made us closer as a family. We used to play a game when they were little. We'd sit on the couch and look out our big window and play I'm thinking of someone in our neighborhood. So I just try to guess the game, just something to do. And then one day it shifted to I'm thinking of someone in heaven. And I realized we have quite a few people in heaven watching over us. And that's a blessing too.
Yeah, because there's been, since your parents and your brothers, we've had a grandma and grandpa, we've had an aunt who's passed away. There are others as well, of course, in the family. And I'm sure you have others in there. How has your testimony evolved in the last 25 years?
I've been asked to share my story at different places, and I think every time I tell it, it evolves. Like you said, it's how we grow. You can pick the easy road or the hard road, and I didn't pick the hard road. Most of us wouldn't pick it if we knew. But as we're coming out of it, we realize what we've learned and gained.
And that you probably heard me ask others, are you glad it happened? And that's always the wrong question. I don't think there's a good way to phrase something like that. Do you feel like it was, I think people would say, and probably you heard people say it right after this took place. It's like, well, there's a plan for everybody. And there's always kind of the things that we tell people when we are not really sure what to say. How do you comfort someone who just lost 4 members of their family, including their mother and their father and so forth? But how do you speak to that?
Well, one thing I would say is don't be worried about what to say to someone after. Just acknowledge it. Even if you say the wrong thing, you're still acknowledging it. So just to be acknowledged instead of trying to avoid it or dance around it. One thing I don't think was very helpful was when people said, oh, I know just how you feel. My grandma just died. I'm like, well, I don't think you know how I feel. So that was hard to hear that. But I still appreciated people acknowledging it. So, and one thing that I will say, always the best food to take to someone after they're grieving is a meat and cheese tray. Because we lost our appetites. We were not hungry, and different people were hungry at different times. So just having a little meat and cheese tray with some buns, we could eat whenever we wanted. That's kind of off topic, but just a very practical thing that helped us that I've used for other people. When I met my husband, and his dad had been gone for years by the time that I met him. So his mom had been into this for years, and I was confused at first. I thought, did she really love him? Because she spoke about it like it was the best thing that happened to her. And I thought, maybe they didn't really have a great relationship, but I've come to learn that they are soulmates, and she has kept his memory alive, but it's also allowed her to do so many things that she thinks she wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. She went back to school, got a degree. She's been able to travel and do these things with her family. And so I think just having her as a role model in navigating this has been wonderful, that you're going to learn things you didn't think you would ever do because of this.
Do you feel like you have been a role model for others because of the experience you've had?
I do. Yes. Whenever, just like you said about empathy, you hear that and it's hard not to think of that. So I just remember that their world has stopped too. Like it's time to just stop and acknowledge and be there for them. I have some books I share with people. I have some thoughts that I share. I'll gift them one of my favorite books that helped me. It's a unique position to be in, to be able to help others. Yeah.
So here we are 25 years later. You've talked about it, how your parents, your brothers are buried here in the town of Enterprise, which is where kind of like my wife's family is from, your family is from as well. You say this is home. When you come here, you've got a couple of your children, two of your four children with you on this little trip, and you were able to go see the graves that are there in the cemetery. What is that like?
It's wonderful. Like I said, they wondered why people were scared of cemeteries, because we've been going for years. We pick out flowers in advance. We think of them, what colors they would like, what type of flower. My mom, always yellow. She woke up happy. She went to bed happy. She was a ray of sunshine. It's a very reverent place. I will share the night of the burial here 24 years ago. It was the Friday of the week of the 16th. The shortest day of the year. I think it was 16, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 20th. It was the winter solstice, shortest day of the year. We went back out to the cemetery after they were buried. It was just us family, and it was Trevor that pointed out there were some birds just in those trees right by where they were buried. And when do you ever hear birds on a winter cold night? But there were birds singing in the trees. So it's a very sacred place to go to the cemetery. But I don't need that to feel close to them, but it's nice to be there.
And based on our knowledge from what we know of the, blessings of the hereafter, so to speak, that people talk about, what are your thoughts in terms of the future?
Again, I just live to feel that happiness with them. I live to be reunited as the whole family with my kids and them. And I know they're busy. I think they're busy. And so I try to be busy too. I try to be doing good on this side.
Awesome. Let me ask you if it feels like a good place for us to stop, but I always like to ask, is there anything else you feel like you would want to share in terms of what we've talked about?
I just appreciate the opportunity to tell a story, and you're a great host. You're able to just get great answers, because I feel very at ease telling my story. It's okay to feel vulnerable and share what happened to me. Just grief is different for everybody. I came across a scripture in 2nd Nephi in the Book of Mormon, and this is 2nd Nephi chapter 4. So when you're reading the Book of Mormon, Nephi is this solid, strong guy. I'll go and do whatever, super strong testimony. And then he get to this chapter and he kind of falls apart. And I thought, why did he fall apart? What happened? He's, wretched man. What am I, and you back up a few verses before that, and that's when his father died, Lehi. So in my mind, I've connected the two. And he sat there for a minute. He was sad for a minute. He grieved, and then he had to pick himself up out of the valley of doom and move forward. And so I use that. Like, if Nephi can have moments where he has to give himself grace to just get through something and not be perfect for a minute, it's okay to give myself grace too, as long as I pick myself up at the end of the day.
That sounds great. That's great advice as well for anybody. Thank you, seriously. Thank you so much, Kim. Appreciate it very much. All right. And of course, as usual, I want to hear from you as well. Go to our Facebook, Navigating a Broken Vessel, Instagram as well. Send me an email, Dave@navigatingabrokenvessel.com. And of course, go to our website, navigatingabrokenvessel.com as well, and feel free to click on episodes if you want to hear any of the past episodes as well. I want to thank Kim for being here. I know it's hard to ask questions. I have a hard time asking questions like that, and I hope it's helpful for all of you who are listening or watching. And do feel free to respond. Thank you so much, Kim, for being here with us, and we'll see you all on the next episode.